Welcome to the Career Management Podcast, where we bring you stories and strategies from students, special guests, and the career management team. As we get set up in the studio, make yourself comfortable, and let's get started. Marco's a fourth-year student doing a dual degree with medical sciences, and we start with his recruiting experience from last year. At this time of year, we know that HBA students who haven't landed summer internships yet might be maybe panicking and wondering, what do I do if I don't get a summer internship? And we hope that it might be helpful to hear from someone who's been in their shoes before and just hear a little bit about how your journey went.
Yeah, for sure. So I kind of got into my HBA 1 year. I was really thinking about consulting initially. Kind of got very engaged in those like big MBB processes early on in the year. Didn't land anything. Kind of was just getting my feet wet for recruiting for the first time. And so as a result of that, I think there was a lot to be learned throughout that process, but it was not the time that you were going to really like excel in an interview process just because, you know, like your competition has probably had more reps than you. So I kind of continued on interviewing throughout the whole year. Towards second semester, started picking up in interviews a little bit more with a variety of firms, but nothing actually stuck. And so I found myself kind of finishing my exams in April. I went back home, started kind of increasing the amount of job boards I was looking at. Like I was really only looking at the Ivy portal prior, started increasing it to like LinkedIn or like My Workday or, you know, other job boards. But ultimately, like my first big recommendation was like push late with the internship search, because I think a lot of kids will get to the end of exams and say like, hey, I don't have an internship. I should probably like make my backup plan, and they don't give themselves a full shot. I would have signed that job kind of end of May. So I think that's pretty late in the scheme of things. I'd really recommend extend that window and look at the industries that, you know, other people are not looking at, that you feel that are close enough to where you want to get to, that you can kind of continue to articulate your story towards, you know, where you aspire to be kind of full time.
So if I'm hearing you correctly, Marco, the first part about the timeline is that, you know, May wasn't too late for you to find and land a summer internship, but it's about not waiting until that time point. So don't leave it late, but also May isn't too late if you've been, you know, doing everything right and still not landing. Keep going is what I'm hearing. Is that right? For sure.
Yeah, I would say like you're definitely late to start in May. But if you have been working all year and you've got active applications out in May, like keep pushing that till the end of May, because I would say there's lots of companies that are hiring for that kind of June entry. Past that, you kind of run out of luck. So I would say keep your targets open at that, and you're gonna have to modify what you're at, like where you want to be, because I think you are kind of picking out of a very confined pool towards that late in the summer, and so you're going to be looking mostly at the industries that are going to be just needing people.
Can you tell us a little bit about how you chose to broaden your search, or what informed that?
I mean, I never fielded kind of like when I was looking up internships, like I just want the list of internships. I don't really want ranked by function, or, you know, I'll do that stuff myself.
And that's on 1220, correct?
Yeah, 1220, but then also LinkedIn, I would say too. Like if you're just like looking up an like just summer internship, and then field location for kind of, you know, the cities you're looking at. But in terms of jobs, just look at all of them. The jobs, I would say, like you'll see, you can kind of see these trends on LinkedIn. Like I remember last summer, I kept getting like, jobs and renewables, and it was like a big category, new jobs every week. I was like, obviously there's some appetite and activity in renewables for employment. And so I think that was a really good place to search. But I think the other like key piece in identifying, like good news reading, good kind of understanding of what's going on globally. Like the other industry I would point students to today would be insurance. I think insurance is kind of like amidst a people crisis, and it also aligns with kind of the function that a lot of kids really aspire to be in after business school, which is like capital allocating, right? It's like, I want to be at a hedge fund, I want to be somewhere where I'm investing. And I think your opportunity to do that at a much easier route than, trying to recruit for those hedge funds is insurance. You can get in, get good mentorship. Like lots of those companies are still actively looking for interns. And then for me, what I did as well as kind of a backup strategy was I had worked the prior summer at a mortgage shop in Toronto and worked my butt off.
I believe you.
So I had quite a bit of I would call it social capital at the firm.
Okay, and what do you mean by social capital? Tell me a little bit more about that.
People thought quite highly of me. I went into that firm within 2 weeks. I was kind of ready to take on a full-time deal by myself. I was probably a little bit slower than a full-time analyst at that time, but I could do all the work without being being overseen the whole time, which was hugely valuable. And I think they, had a great summer there. I had lots of really tight connections at the end of that summer. So I, when I was kind of faced with that jobless state, it was reach out to those guys because at least those guys have, as opposed to kind of cold outreach, those guys have an idea of what I'm willing to bring to the table. And, they're going to be, I think their pitch to somebody to hire me is going to be a lot more compelling than the kind of one-off coffee chat that I had at some firm.
So this wasn't necessarily a group or a connection that you had planned to have, but through your experiences built as you went without knowing that, hey, I might need to call on this later. It sounds like something that grew organically as a result of, your work ethic and how you showed up.
Yeah, for sure. I would say, but I would say you definitely want to reach out to profs, teachers, anybody that is you feel you've demonstrated kind of compelling work ethic in front of. I would say get those people kind of to vouch for you as well, because I think they open up a whole sphere of opportunities that are not even on the job board. Being
proactive in your approach as well, like you say, reaching out.
For sure.
Okay.
Sure. And so, to kind of continue where I was with that, I reached out to my boss, and he had put me in contact with this small development firm. Really cool company. They're doing cool stuff. They basically wanted me to come on as an intern and be the kid who knew everything about how mortgage shops punch out development models for lending. So
that's a big ask.
Yeah, big ask. But simultaneously, I had this opportunity. And so what I'd say about kind of from the expansion point is, I knew I didn't want to be in real estate. I liked it. I love the finance element of it. I just real estate's kind of snoozy for me. I like the kind of high risk, impact, very entrepreneurial, innovative industries more in my field of study, biotech. But and so ultimately, I made that decision to kind of just go into renewables, which I had zero experience in, because I thought it was closer to that industry that I wanted to search for. Mm. And I would say retrospectively, I for everybody's information, I've just signed an investment banking job right in biotech, and so I totally think that kind of option to not continue in real estate and go somewhere else that's a little bit more sciencey was kind of a really key in making that next connection for where I am now. So I definitely push you to expand and once you've kind of collected those kind of final opportunities, because I'm pretty certain if you are doing your outreach and applying, those May opportunities, they will come, because at that point there's just not that many candidates that are left.
Two things I hear from that, Marco. The first is the need for congratulations on your offer.
Thank you.
That's a wonderful opportunity. And the second is what I got from your story there is you had this idea of what your next stepping stone was going to be. And when that didn't follow through, you pivoted to a stepping stone that was maybe a little to the left or a little to the right. And then the next stepping stone was that original land. For sure. Yeah, I would say, and I think that's possible in just about everybody's experience, wherever you're trying to be full-time. So I would definitely encourage you, I do encourage you to look at those small, under-allocated industries. That is a gold mine. You will find better opportunities, you will learn more in those industries, and it's just easier to kind of
continue on from those building block experiences, as opposed to I don't know, looking at really competitive industries where you're not certain that you're going to get a job there every summer. So I do, I think candidates kind of always have to be balancing, like you should be feeling for the competitiveness of the processes that you're really aspiring in, and, what the opposite kind of feels like. But I will say, like, competition is a challenging thing to deal with, I think, for a lot of students.
Mm-hmm.
I just think you've really kind of, to get out of those competitive pools, you've got to have that expansion kind of mentality.
Okay. If you were to time travel back a year ago to when you were putting out applications and getting interviews, but it's not translating into landing a role, how did that feel for you?
I would say frustrating. I think it's a challenging process. Like, I think initially my learning curve was like, how do I get the interview? And then it switched to like, how do I make it through like first round? And then it kind of like, at the end, it's like, why can't I break through that final round? But challenging process. If I were to go back and do it again, I'd tailor my outreach a lot more. Like, I think initially it was like, okay, I'm going to send a pretty generalist coffee chat email and have a pretty basic coffee chat. Now my strategy is kind of, constantly thinking about how can I stand out in that process. So it's, researching and kind of like profiling heads at the firm for a couple weeks and figuring out like, okay, this person is, like I was looking for, who was in the private equity group, because like I had a coffee chat kind of pitch that was ready for somebody in the private equity group. And so, had I done it again early on, I would have told myself, tailor your outreach. And then later on, I don't know. I don't really have much feedback for kids that are making it to the very last stage of the process. It's challenging. Like, you got to fight to get information from the recruiter. You got to just stay in contact with those firms you want, because you don't know when they're going to have another opportunity. But if you have a recent interview that's, shows your talent, they're more than likely to bring you on processless. Depends on the firm, obviously, but I think there's lots of opportunities there. So I just think, if you're getting to that interview stage every time, like, there's not too much to change from the outreach approach. From the interview approach, it's challenging, it's subtle, it changes firm to firm, and I think it's about having, establishing a good group of people at that firm that are pulling for you to work there. Like, that's imperative. You got to have that. And then number 2 and 3 is, I think, a really deep dissection of what this role requires. Like, what are the key skills, and how am I going to demonstrate that on this interview? I think some of my interviews have been failures in the sense because I've, didn't make it past the process, but they've been very informative in teaching me about what that role expects. Like, what is the expectation for a consultant? And so I think, get to those processes, and then it's about minute tweaks once you're in that final once you're consistently making it to the interview process.
So at times, being in the interview, it felt in the moment like the purpose was to land this job. And in hindsight, part of the purpose was also learning.
Yeah, for sure. Like, it was like standard 2 back-to-back consulting cases. And like, I got feedback from both managers saying, like, your analysis was perfect. Your math, very quick. Like, you crunched the numbers fantastically. Your qualitative, quantitative size, that was all great. You didn't present like a consultant. And so it was like, oh, okay, like, I get that. That's part of this business model. And so that's where I say, like, maybe it's not for me.
What do you think you wanted or needed to hear in those moments of frustration? You're doing all that you can do and still not getting the results that you want. What do you think you needed to hear or know in that moment?
It's only a problem if you make it a problem. And so I think digesting that a little bit. So you're in that process. Like, I mean, if you're feeling bad because you're not giving it everything you got, that's a simple fix. Like, just go give that process everything you have. if you're in the situation where you feel like you're consistently, giving it everything you have and it's not translating to results, that's the frustrating situation. But the other thing is, like, I don't know, if you have the expectations that you're going to get every single one of those final processes, you're going to just lead to it's going to be devastating when you don't do it. There's like if you can be kind of mentally strong enough to say that after every process that doesn't work, like maybe that's just kind of the way it is. Like I just got to keep going, keep altering. Like that's when it happened. And so what I would say is for my offer this summer, I interviewed there and they rejected me immediately after. And it was only until this last week on like Wednesday that I get an email at 5 p.m. saying like, hey, we might have a summer internship opportunity for you. I respond and learn their candidate reneged. So the thing is, like, you could be really, really pissed off in that moment and like hate the company and feel super frustrated and, I'm never going to apply there again, whatever. But, you could, on a stellar interview performance, that might still get you the job there before your summer's over. So it's, I would say like, it's not a problem until you make it a problem. And I was in that kind of, looking for a job place for almost like 2 years. And so it's really a factor of, it's going to be your own, it's a struggle with your own mind. So I think you got to make sure you understand that and you don't put too much weight on these internships because they're insignificant. I really think if you are the right person for that specific element, like you will make it there. It may not be by the path that you anticipate out of grad, but you will absolutely, you can absolutely get there.
Mm-hmm. What I take from that, Marco, too, is that, again, you did everything right. They wanted you for the job. It wasn't that you weren't a good fit for the job. It was that there was someone else who might have been, for whatever reason, the choice. And even though they said no, they came back around. It wasn't that you did anything wrong or that you weren't a good fit. And they came back around and now you are in that role. I feel like sometimes students feel like if they didn't get a role, it means they've done something wrong. And I like your perspective of look at what you can tweak, take it as a learning opportunity, as well as recognizing the strengths and the accomplishments that you do bring to the table. I recognize not everyone will end up in your situation where you get a no and then 2 days later get a yes. But that piece of balancing what can I control, what can I learn from, while also not getting frustrated or feeling like a failure. Because again, you can be doing everything right and still not land. It's about learning what you can and keeping going. And I'm so glad you kept going.
Yeah, for sure. And then the other thing I just add on there is like focus on the statistics. Like some of those interview processes, if you do the math on how many applicants and just getting picked for the interview is a very rigorous task. So, I mean, like, celebrate those accomplishments too, even if they're not ultimately leading to the job. You should still celebrate those because they mark, significant improvement over what's been accomplished by you in the past. So I really think you got to kind of celebrate there's going to be lots of wins and losses in that process, and you just got to be ready to roll with those punches. Mm-hmm.
My last question for you, Marco, and my most important question for you, how are you celebrating your recent win?
How am I celebrating?
Talking about the importance of celebration.
Yeah, so I mean, I am invited to the firm's healthcare investor conference, which is hosted at the Toronto Metropolitan Centre downtown on next week on the 16th and 17th.
And how about in terms of friends and family? Are you sharing the news yet?
Yeah, like I've told all my friends and my family. Had like a nice dinner out with my friends, and then nice congrats from all my family. But I would say probably celebrate with them when I get back to Toronto.
Mm-hmm. I think even sometimes just sharing the news, sharing the good news with someone else can be celebratory in its own right.
For sure.
And again, Marco, it sounds like there's lots to celebrate for yourself this summer and no doubt beyond. So congratulations. Thank you again for joining me here today and wishing you all the best for your months ahead.
Awesome. Thank you so much for having me.
Cheers. After hearing Marco's success story, I called in my colleague Melissa Gunnis to offer a career management perspective. Welcome, Melissa.
Thank you, Kate. Thanks for having me.
Melissa, what's your role with career management?
So my current role is the Associate Director of HBA Career Management Programming. So what that really means is developing programming for our HBA audience here at Ivy.
You've also just listened to Marco's recruitment story from his HBA 1. What top tips did you hear from Marco?
Oh my God, there were so many good things. I think there's three things that came to mind as I was listening. The first, really don't give up and keep looking. Network, looking at job boards, doing it all until the end of May, which is what Marco shared. But I would say even into June. Many students think that internships start in May or June, and while many do, certainly not all of them. We actually see internships range from both 8 or all the way to 16 weeks, meaning they don't have to start until July sometimes. And he also talked about expanding the job boards you're reviewing. So going beyond the Ivy job board, I think that's important too. Western has a job board, LinkedIn, Indeed, and even industry-specific job boards can be super helpful.
Amazing. So don't give up. Marco and I talked about April and May, but you're saying include June.
Yeah, absolutely. The second thing I would say is broadening your search. So Marco talked about looking into industries, areas of business that might be booming right now, and begin researching them or consider coffee chatting people within those organizations. There are also companies that naturally wait until the few months before the summer to do their hiring. So you may want to look both at Ivy, but also consider other job boards. And you certainly don't have to, look just at Ivy. As I mentioned, you certainly look beyond too. The other thing that Marco talked about is that there's so many ways to get to your goal. He talked about how so many students think that there's this perfect internship and, that's what's going to help you get your role post-graduation, when in fact there are so many avenues to get to that same goal. It certainly doesn't have to even be an internship. Your summer experience can be paid or unpaid. It can fill skill gaps for you. It can give you exposure to parts of a business. It can ultimately help you to prototype what you like and what you don't like in a job. And this summer really helps regardless of the type of experience you have, even if it means it's a little bit different than what you had envisioned, and that's okay. But know that whatever it is, it will help you to achieve your goal in the long run, maybe in a little bit of a different fashion.
Very cool. So in addition to broadening their search, also knowing that there are many options for the next stepping stone,
Absolutely.
As Marco said earlier. Okay,
Yeah.
Amazing. If there's one thing that you wanted a student to take away, your own top tip, if you will, what would it be?
Recruiting is hard. And there are so many moving pieces. And while it's certainly not easy, as Marco mentioned, I want to reiterate, don't give up. One of the things he had talked about that I would often say as one of my top tips too is this expansion mentality. I totally agree with what he talked about. Keep looking, expanding where and how you're looking for opportunities, using coffee chatting as a way to learn, not necessarily a means to an end to get a job. And at the end of the day, it's not too late. Please don't give up exploring.
Who can help students as they're navigating all this on their own?
Advisors. You certainly have your peers. You have so many people in the Ivy community, but I would say don't forget that you have career advisors. We can be an accountability partner for you. We can help to just push you. We can help to, take a look at your strategy, whether or not you want to pivot in your plan, just somebody to talk to about where you've been and where you want to go. So I would say reach out to an advisor. We're happy to help.
Melissa, thank you so much for joining me today. It was a pleasure.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you for listening. If you are interested in connecting with career management, you can book a one-on-one appointment by visiting the 1220 Appointments tab online or by visiting our space at room 2235 in the Ivy Building at Western University. Take good care.